Introduction to program or software development. In this video lesson, we are going to discuss about the different steps involved in the development of a program. How we should start writing programs. Before we can write and execute our first program, we need to understand in more detail how programs get developed. The first step we have is define the problem to be solved. In the second step, we design a solution to the problem which has been defined in step 1. Once we design the solution, then we move to the third step, that is write a program that implements the solution designed in the step 2. Once the program is written, then we move to the step 4 to compile the program. If there are some errors in the program that we have written in step 3, once the program is free of errors, then we compile the program. Means once the fourth step is complete, then the program is compiled and the object files are created, and in the fifth step we link the object files with the library of the C++ program, and final product, that is executable file, is delivered. And in the sixth step we test and debug the program by giving the suitable inputs and check if the program works according to the expectations or not. Now let us discuss these steps in detail. First step is define the problem that you would like to solve. In this step, the focus is on what. This step is also known as the what step, where you figure out what you are going to solve. Coming up with the initial ideas for what you would like to program can be the easiest step or the hardest, but conceptually it is the simplest. All you need is an idea that can be well defined, and you are ready for the next step. So in this step we define what is the problem. How the problem is going to be solved, it is not discussed in step 1. First of all, we have to check what is the problem, what needs to be done. Once it is defined that what needs to be done, then we can move to step 2. And step 2 is determine how you are going to solve the problem. Now the problem has been defined that this is required to be done. So in the step 2 we discuss how it will be done, how we shall obtain the solution to the problem defined in step 1. This step is known as the how step, where you determine how you are going to solve the problem you came up within step 1. It is also the step that is most neglected in software development. The crux of the issue is that there are many ways to solve a problem. However, some of these solutions are good and some of them are bad. Too often a programmer will get an idea, sit down and immediately start coding a solution. This almost always generates a solution that falls into the bad category. What does it mean? It means that first of all we have to define the problem. Once the problem is defined, then we have to write down the solution to the problem, that how the problem is going to be solved, and then we will move to the coding part. But sometimes what happens initially, okay, we are given the problem and directly we start coding. That is a bad practice and it is not recommended, because if the size of the program is small, then you can get the solution directly. But as the size of the program grows, then the probability of getting failed of your program also increases. Typically, good solutions have the following characteristics. They are straightforward. It means in the step 2 we are writing how the problem is going to be solved. So we have to write the instructions or the manuals which are straightforward. They are well documented. It means each and every step of the solution has to be recorded in a document. They can be easily extended. That is, to add new features that were not originally anticipated. We have to design a solution in such a way that in future the solution may be extended towards the new requirements, and they are modularized. That is, the solution is modularized. It is based on the different modules. Modular approaches followed. Then, once the step 1 and step 2 has been defined, when the problem is defined and the solution to the problem has been defined, then we will move to the coding part. In order to write the program, we need two things. First, we need knowledge of a programming language such as C++, where we have to be familiar with the syntax and working of the C++ language. And second, we need an editor. So what is an editor? An editor is a piece of software which gives us the facility to write the program in a particular programming language. It is possible to write a program using any editor you want. For example, in Windows we have Notepad or WordPad. However, it is strongly recommended to use an editor that is designed for coding, only for coding purpose. Because if we use an editor which has been designed for the coding purpose, it gives us a lot of facilities. A typical editor designed for coding has a few features that make programming much easier, including the line numbering. First point, we have the line numbering. Line numbering is useful when the compiler gives us an error. You imagine a situation where we have a program of say 500 lines, and if you have committed some errors in the program, some syntax errors, then once you complete the program writing, then you compile the program, and your compiler will flash you some error messages that this particular line has occurred at this particular line number. So to trace out that particular line number, or to count that particular line number, or to move your cursor or insertion point to that particular line number may be of great problem. Means it may be quite difficult to trace that particular line number and move your insertion point to that to rectify the problem. So in such a situation, if we have a this editor which gives you the facility of auto line numbering, means you go on adding the codes and automatically line numbers are appended, then it will help you to move to the particular line very easily. Next is syntax highlighting and coloring. Syntax highlighting and coloring changes the color of various parts of your program to make it easier to see the overall structure of your program. For example, the reserved words or keywords are highlighted by the editor, and it helps us in reading the program and tracing the errors that could have occurred in your program. So these two features, that is line numbering and syntax highlighting and coloring, are the exclusive features of an editor which has been designed for coding purpose. Your C++ program should be called name.cpp, where name is replaced with the name of your program. The CPP extensions tells the compiler, and basically you, that this is a C++ source code file that contains C++ instructions. Also note that many complex C++ programs have multiple CPP files. We can have a program which can be composed, means we can have a program, C++ program, which includes multiple CPP files. Although most of the programs you will be creating initially will only have a single CPP file, it is possible to write single programs that have tens of individual CPP files. The conclusion is that initially when we start writing the C++ programs, then we will have a single CPP file. But if you are working on a larger projects, big projects, in such a situation, then you are expected to create multiple C++ files for a single program. Step number 4. Compiling a C++ program. In order to compile a program, we need a compiler. And we know that what a compiler is. A compiler is a special piece of software which converts our source programs into machine programs, machine codes. Before converting our source codes into machine codes, actually compiler performs some jobs that we are going to discuss. The job of the compiler is twofold: to check your program and make sure it follows the syntactical rules of the C++ language. Suppose you are writing a program and while writing the program you have not followed the syntax of the C++ language. Intentionally or by mistake you have violated the rules of C++ language. Who is going to tell you about that? It is the compiler, which will tell you that there is something wrong with the syntax. You cannot move forward until the errors that you have committed in your source program, they are rectified. Once your program is free of syntax errors, then you can move to the next step. And the second job of the compiler is to take your source code as input and produce a machine language object file as output. Object files are typically name.obj, or in some compilers you will find it to be name.o, where name is the name of your file, of your source or your C++ file, C++ source code file, and .o or .obj is an extension to the file name given, which has been produced by which your compiler produces after compiling the program. If your program had 5 CPP files, the compiler would generate 5 object files. We have the source file, that is CPP file, C++ program file. It is directed to the compiler, and we obtain object file whose extension is .o, or in some compilers it may be .obj. In the same fashion, other source files, CPP, if you have multiple CPP files, they are directed to the compiler, and accordingly the object files are created. Once the object files are created, then the process of linking starts. Linking is the process of taking all the object files for a program and combining them into a single executable. So we have first object file then second object file, third object file, fourth object file, fifth object file, and so on. All the object files are integrated together, and along with the runtime support, the linker, all these files are directed to the linker, and linker is a piece of software basically, where in fact linker is inbuilt utility in the compiler, and with the help of this linking process, the compiler generates the final product, that is executable file. Means a full-fledged file which can directly be executed by the central processing unit. Once the executable file is produced, then the job of the compiler is over, and this file may be executed by CPU without the help of the compiler. It is not required to take the help of the compiler to execute the file. It will be directly executed by the CPU. In the next video lesson, we shall discuss about the editor, or sometimes we call it as the integrated development environment, and we shall try to install an editor to compose or to write our C++ programs and watch its different features.